The Supreme Court made a massive decision on Planned Parenthood, and it's good news for our side, if you know what I mean. Welcome to Doug In Exile. This is where the happy patriots are. If you don't want to miss out on a single Supreme Court case, then you've come to the right place. There are about 5 or 6 major cases going on right now, even as this episode uploads, so I will keep you posted on them. I won't skip a major one just to keep you updated on everything that you need to know, especially stuff that affects the conservative movement and stuff that is against the liberal side of things. We're going to hit those extra hard. Here's that case on Planned Parenthood. And then we'll go do a quick overview of what cases are left to talk about on the docket. Supreme Court boots challenge to a state defunding Planned Parenthood in major pro-life victory. God is good. Thankful for this. Supreme Court ruled in a case over South Carolina's attempt to block public funding for Planned Parenthood. The Supreme Court ruled Thursday that South Carolina has the power to block Medicaid funding for Planned Parenthood clinics, and a technical interpretation over healthcare choices that has emerged as a larger political fight over abortion access. So what happened was, the Supreme Court, they're told, you can't block healthcare, and the Supreme Court, all they do is prove that abortion was not women's healthcare. The case, Medina versus Planned Parenthood South Atlantic, centers on whether low-income Medicaid patients can sue under what is known as Section 1983, part of the Civil Rights Act of 1871. That's a huge stretch, in order to choose their own qualified healthcare provider. This was already a bad, just poorly argued. It involves South Carolina's blocking of Medicaid funding for Planned Parenthood South Atlanta, which organization argued violated federal law in a 6-3 decision. Gee, I wonder what the split was on that. 6-3. The court noted that the typical redress for such a violation would be for the Secretary of Health and Human Services to withhold Medicaid funding from the state, not for an individual to sue the state. Section 1893 permits private plaintiffs to sue for violations of federal spending over statutes only in atypical situations where the provision is in question clearly and unambiguously confers an individual right. Justice Neil Gorsuch, good guy, wrote in the majority opinion ruling that the law in question in the present case is not such a statute. And our buddy Mike Davis used to clerk for Neil Gorsuch. After all, the decision whether to let the private plaintiffs enforce a new statutory right possesses delicate questions of public policy, Gorsuch added. New rights for some mean new duties for others, and private enforcement actions, meritorious or not, can force governments to direct money away from public services and spend it instead on litigation. The job of resolving how best to weigh those competing costs and benefits belongs to the people's elected representatives at the state, not unelected judges at the courts, charged with applying the law as they find it. South Carolina's Governor Henry McMaster had been pushing to block public health dollars from going to Planned Parenthood. So Henry McMaster, good guy, governor. But a resident and patient at Planned Parenthood, South Atlanta, argued that doing so violated her rights under the Medicaid Act. The key provision in 1965, Medicaid Act, guarantees patients a free choice of provider that is willing and qualified. Much of the conflict dealt with whether Planned Parenthood was a qualified provider under the Medicaid law and whether individual patients have an unambiguous right to sue to see their provider of choice under its specific. So it was just too specific, and Planned Parenthood didn't fall under it. There's the actual PDF document. Let's see how long this thing is. I'm going to go down to the bottom. Ooh, holy cow. That thing is long. 64 pages long. I'll spare you. There's going to be a lot of tight legal language in that. Writing for the dissent, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. Boo. Anti-human. Joined by Justices Sonia Sotomayor and Alina Kagan, the three witches, called the approach taken by South Carolina and the court's majority a narrow and ahistoric reading of Section 1893. This bodes well for new precedent, guys, for our side. There's no higher court than the Supreme Court. No one underneath it's going to be able to challenge it. That venerable provision, she says, permits any citizen to obtain redress in federal court for the deprivation of any rights, privileges, or immunities secured by the Constitution and laws of the United States. Jackson wrote, South Carolina asks us to hollow out that provision so that the state can evade liability for violating the rights of its Medicaid recipients to choose their own doctors. Federal law already prohibits Medicaid. Well, what about Obamacare, where Obama said you will be able to choose your own doctor? And then magically all my doctors that I preferred, including for my own surgeries on my cancer on my face, they fell off of my insurance policy, so I can't choose my own doctor. Federal law already prohibits Medicaid money from going to pay for abortions, good, with very limited exceptions. South Carolina bans almost all abortions around 6 weeks after conception or when cardiac activity is detected, with limited exceptions. In South Carolina, Medicaid patients often seek out Planned Parenthood, the Moloch temple, because it accepts publicly funded insurance. Blocking the provider from Medicaid networks could effectively defund it. The universe is healing. We agree with the Supreme Court. I like the Supreme Court decision. I like when they fall within the law. There are just 2 Planned Parenthood clinics in South Carolina, but every year they take hundreds of low-income patients for reproductive health care, including contraception, cancer screenings, and pregnancy testing, according to the Associated Press. The Associated Press is lying there. By the way, it is a tiny percentage of their actual network that does that. They are just 2. Planned Parenthood. South Atlantic has argued that the case is not about abortion, but about access to general health care. So that's far upstream from this whole thing. Next up, the Supreme Court will hear pro-life nonprofits' free speech fight against New Jersey. And then here's one more article on just the overall docket at the Supreme Court. This is by the Associated Press. Supreme Court has 6 cases to decide, including the big one, birthright citizenship, known as anchor babies. If you drop a baby here and you're an illegal, does that baby get citizenship? Which is pretty, I don't know if it's enumerated in the Constitution, but it's certainly well applied. And I'm just going to say it's being abused. And so we're going to find out if the Supreme Court believes that the intent of birthright citizenship is to allow, say, an illegal to come here, quickly get pregnant, drop a baby, and then they're secured that baby's rights, if that's what it's here for. Because I believe that's a violation of the intent of the law and all the constitutional constructionists, which came from, well, it's Alito and Clarence Thomas are the main constructionists. But it goes all the way back to Scalia. He goes, what was the intent of the people that wrote that birthright citizenship law? Was their intent to allow it to be taken advantage of? Okay, here's the cases. I'm just going to scan this looking for them. Supreme Court in the final days of the term that has lately been dominated by the Trump administration's emergency appeals of lower courts seeking to slow President Donald Trump's efforts to remake the federal government. But the justices have 6 cases to resolve that were argued between January and mid-May. One of the argued cases was an emergency appeal, the administration's bid to enforce Trump's executive order denying birthright citizenship to U.S.-born children of parents who are in the country illegally. This is going to be big because this could affect Trump's agenda. And suddenly all these illegals know, man, if they find out this is the workaround, look for them all to get someone pregnant, including a prostitute. They'll just go, hey, we need us some pregnancy here. The remaining opinions will be delivered Friday. Chief Justice Roberts, so this got pushed to Friday. These were supposed to come out today and they got pushed. John Roberts said on Thursday, a divided court allowed states to cut off Medicaid money for Planned Parenthood. Okay, Trump's birthright citizenship order has been blocked by lower courts. The court rarely hears arguments over emergency appeals, but it took up the administration's plea to narrow orders that have prevented the citizenship changes from taking effect anywhere in the United States. The issue before the justices is whether to limit the authority of judges to issue nationwide injunctions, which have plagued both Republican and Democratic administrations for 10 years. So look for that one. It also looks likely to side with Maryland parents in a religious rights case over LGBTQ storybooks in public schools. That's the other one. There's another one, a 3-year battle over congressional districts in Louisiana is making its second trip to the Supreme Court. This is about gerrymandering districts in Louisiana. And I believe the Supreme Court's going to punt on that one. I mean, it's going to be a tough one for them to decide because they don't like getting involved in elections. That's a different branch of the government. The justices are weighing a Texas law aimed at blocking kids from seeing online adult material, which I'm for. That's going to be a big free speech argument. So you can see we got a whole lot of drama coming out tomorrow. And if you guys subscribe, I'm going to cover it. So come on in. You won't miss it. You ring that bell and ding, here it comes. To the Quad Club who've made it all the way to the end of this video. You've watched all 4 videos today and you're in the Quad Club. You really help keep the lights on around here. You really make me happy. Subscribing and watching is how you say thank you. Leave a comment below. Let us know you're there. I'm Doug in Exile.